Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. As always, my name is Jay, and in this video I want to talk about the new points cost changes to Aeldari. The reason why I'm starting with Aeldari is I'll probably make some videos on some other armies as well in the near future, but I want to start with Aeldari because obviously that is the focus of the nerfing. Right? This whole rebalancing was really Imperial Knights, Aeldari, Genestealer, Cult. And in my previous video, if you want to go check it out as well, I talked about how the data slate really just kind of nerfed Genestealer, Cult, and Imperial Knights. Not as much as Eldar. Eldar was really only affected, a lot more than Eldar. Eldar was really only affected by the change Devastating Wounds and one stratagem, you know? Today I want to talk about the points cost, because there were a lot of points costs. About 20 some odd models got affected by point changes for Aeldari, all of which went up. Some went up by as little as 6%, some went up by as much as like 30%. So it does make a difference. Now, my question to you, and the one that I can think is, did it make enough of a difference? I still argue no. I think Aeldari is still going to be very competitive, and I still think 1,700 points of Aeldari could take out 2,000 points of a lot of other armies. Maybe it's me, maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I think Aeldari is incredibly strong still. The rules stay the same. The rules stay the same, the powers stay the same, the maneuverability stays the same, the survivability stays the same, the vehicles stay the same. What really changed is, again, there are not a lot of Devastating Wounds won't produce mortal wounds, so Wraith Knight will be nerfed, right? Indirect Fire will be slightly nerfed, but it's still an incredibly strong army. What are your thoughts? Leave comments in the comment section down below of what you think. Let's talk about it. So, let's start off with the small changes in points. Of course, Dark Reapers, Illic, they both went up by 5 points. So, Dark Reapers went from 75 to 80, Illic went from 65 to 70 points. You know, 7-8% changes. Pretty small. Autarchs, the Autarch Skyrunner, Eldrad, Night Spinners, Vipers, and Wayleapers all went up by 10 points, right? So Autarch Skyrunners went from 80 to 90, Autarchs went from 65 to 75, Eldrad went from 100 to 110, Night Spinner went from 170 to 180, and Vipers went from 75 to 85, Wayleaper 80 to 90 points. So all increased by 10 points, which represent between a 6 and a 13% increase in points. These are minor. And the thing is, what I think about these point changes is that I think point changes now have to be significant to make a huge difference, because now there's no upgrades. So beforehand, like, these points would cost you other upgrades. Usually, like when I was building a list in previous editions, I'd get to like 1,930 points, and then I'd start adding upgrades, right? Because I want to upgrade my models and enhancements. In this one, there's no upgrades to anything that besides enhancement. So that all the war gear is included. So I find that I don't know how big of a change this is going to make. That's what I'm wondering. I think you have to have a cumulative to really cost us a squad. Up next, we have the 15-point increases. So Azurmen, Farseers, Skyrunners, Warwalkers, Warp Spiders, and Wraithguard all went up by 15 points. And once again, these are actually larger increases. It represents between like a 13% and a 23% increase in point increases. That's huge, right? So once again, Azurmen went from 120 to 135. Farseers went from 65 to 80. That's actually a substantial increase for a Farseer. I think that's a pretty fair. I would put them at like 75 points myself. So 80 points seems maybe even a little high, but yeah, they do a lot of stuff, and they really do have great synergy with so many squads. Skyrunners went from 75 to 90. Warwalkers, 95 to 110. I used to love the Warwalkers. Warp Spiders, 100 to 115. That could still be, to me, a discount. I'd put them at like 125, because their maneuverability and their movement is just insane. Frankly, it's just nuts what they can do. Wraithguard from 155. Wraithguard are brutal in this edition. They are very strong to 170. 10% increase, right? Cool. So overall in that group, once again, they're all heavy hitters. They all went up by 15 points. Craziness. And now we're in the 20-point increases. So we're getting to some pretty big point increases, including the biggest relative point increases. Death Jesters went from 70 points to 90 points. That's almost a 30% increase right there. Nuts. And support weapons went from 105 to 125, so again, about a 20% increase. The reason being is, of course, if you look at Death Jesters and support weapons in this edition, they're both very represented and they both hit extremely hard. They both do their job, and support weapons especially are really strong in this edition. They went up by 20 points. Makes sense. Makes sense. The Void Weaver went up by 25 points, which is a 25% increase. It went from 100 points to 125 points. The Fire Prison went up 30 points, so 150 to 180. The Wraith Knight. Oh, sorry. The Wraith Knight actually went up by 35 points, which is a bit. It's already been increased a couple times. I believe this is the second increase, but it went from 4. Yeah, it was, because it was in the 380 roughly originally. So 475 to 510. So if you look at how substantially this model has been increased in points, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was starting in the 300s when the edition came out 3 months ago, and now it's 510. So it increased by 35 points, which is a 7% increase overall. And what really hit the Wraith Knight hard is the change to Devastating Wounds, right? Because now you can't have a Wraith Knight killing a squad of 6 guys instantly, because your fate dice, you just place it and you're instant, right? Like that was so brutal and so broken that you can wipe out whole squads of guys with a single shot because of your dice. You just fate dice of 6. Silly. And of course, the Avatar of Cain went from 295 to 335. Once again, terrific model. Hits really hard, very strong model in this edition. Went up by 14%. So if you look at relative actually increases, the Wraith Knight and the Avatar of Cain were actually relatively small compared to the rest of the army, but it's still starting to get expensive. So now is my question to you. Do you think they did enough? Is this net getting too expensive? I still don't think so. I think it's closer to fair. I like this, and we should try it out for a little bit and see what happens. I'm pretty sure that these models got more expensive, and what you're going to see is the other models in the Codex jump up in awesomeness. As I said multiple times, this really does have a feel like Dark Eldar in previous editions, where one model would get nerfed, the next one would then become the best one in the internal balance and just dominate, and then it's this whole game of whack-a-mole, which is cool. But in this edition, these models are extremely strong. Did they do enough? I don't know. The rules stay the same. Movement stays the same. The shooting stays the same, other than change to Devastating Wounds. The maneuverability stays the same. The craziness stays the same, right? So they're going to hit just as hard. For most of these models, are going to hit just as hard as they did before the balance, just you're going to have slightly less models. Now, I did, just for fun, I took a look at some of the models, the armies that have won a lot of the GTs lately, and the major tournaments. And so a 2,000 point, a couple of them were like 1995, but so let's say a 2,000 point Eldar army before the increase would end up being between 2250, 2275 on the low end. The most competitive list I looked at, the cheapest one would become 2265. And the most expensive one became 2385, I'm pretty sure. The reason was they ran a bunch of Wraith Knights. Was it Wraith Knights? I saw a couple of Wraith Knights on one list. That increased by 70 points alone. And then Death Jesters, yeah, it was again, so typically we're looking at between a 12-13% increase overall to about a 17% increase overall, 18% increase overall in points. So now I was basically looking at it, and you could remove 1 or 2 squads of guys, and that would be the same 2,000 point list. So I would just, a couple less of the smaller squads, remove 260, 70 points, you're back at 2,000 points. So let's pretend, and again, to go equivalent, once again I went reverse equivalent, if I was running a list at about 1,790, 1,800 points in a competitive list, you can basically make that into a 2,000 point list today. So, yeah, so the question is, could 1,800 points of Eldar beat a 2,000 point list of any other army? I'd still say yes. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not a skies falling type person, but I've seen countless videos and strategies, and I haven't played against Eldar in this edition. I have not, but I've seen enough, and I know the rules, and I can compare them to the armies I play, and it's really strong, and it's a very strong codex. And I still think 1,800 points of Eldar could beat 2,000 points of most other armies on a given day, especially if they go first. If they go first, the opponent has a very small chance of winning. That's just me. But I do feel, obviously, that this will help bring them closer in line. But once again, I still think the nerfs to Genestealer Cult and Wraith Knights, Wraith Knights, Imperial Knights, and the Knights in general are going to bring this army just even stronger in the forefront. So we'll see. Let's see what happens over the next few weeks. I'm going to go to tournament in a few weeks, and I'm predicting Eldar are going to run away with it. Maybe someone else will run up. Again, some armies have gotten cheaper, but the rules haven't changed. That's what I keep saying. So you can bring more models, but they're just going to die. Question. I don't know. And again, I've seen countless videos of Eldar leaf blowing your opponent off the table. So I've seen several tabled games in competitive meta with Eldar. I don't know. As I said, what do you think? Leave comments in the comment section down below what you think about these upgrades. Did they do enough? Did they do too much? Is it getting too expensive? Do you think, like me, is it just going to be the next model's going to take the place of the current ones, and then they'll go up in cost, and these ones will go down, and so forth? You know? Obviously, people running 3 Wraith Knights might be not running 3 Wraith Knights anymore. That's what my guess is. The meta will shift for Eldar, but I still think they're going to be a very strong codex among the meta. So, stay tuned for more videos, stay tuned for more reviews. Leave comments in the comment section down below what you think. And I am interested in your opinion. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. It really does help a lot. Until next time, this is Jay saying.